First, I would like to thank you so much, Marta, for being here and for joining us on the East Coast Fashion Summit. I know you've worked with so many great designers, including uh, our Canadian Christian Siriano, and so many companies like Nordstrom, Target, Walmart, Zulily, Urban Outfitters. The list keeps going. And I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about how you got started and how you ended up in this amazing fashion production space.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a journey, if you will, but a fun one. So I, you know, went to school, and like so many designers, I really felt like I needed my own line.
Yeah.
And I kind of sought out to do that, but I wanted to do that in the age before we have all these awesome things available to us, like Makers Row, or like all of these, what you're doing right now, speaking to people, and all of these tools that make starting a line just so much easier and more transparent, if you will. And so, I sought to do it myself, and just ended up with a lot of headaches and hurdles, which a lot of new brands can anticipate having in their first few years of business. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And so through that experience of having my own brand, I really learned just the difficulty in being a small brand and manufacturing. And it was really, I would say, now being a factory owner, I understand more the perspective of the factories I was trying to get into, but the factories are busy. A good factory is busy, right? And so,
Guys.
um, you get into a good factory? How do you get them to want to pay attention to a brand new product? How do you sell them your product? Because ultimately even though you're paying them, you're also wanting them to commit to you. How do you have those conversations? And we had a really hard time getting a factory to believe in our product, take our product seriously, and really there wasn't a one-stop shop solution. So we dealt with a pattern maker, and then we didn't even have a pattern maker and a sample maker that were in the same company. So our sample sewer was telling us that the pattern maker messed up, and the pattern maker was telling us that the sample maker messed up, and I'm like, I don't care who messed up, just
Everybody
fix it. And there was just this. The marking and grading guy came on board, and it was the samples were done wrong, and there's so many ways in the process, especially now that I really understand the process, where you need a good team and you need to curate that good team from the beginning. Right now, like if you're building a house, right, you don't want the interior designer to not know who the architect is, right? Like there's a symbiotic relationship that happens in creating something. And so I was just constantly frustrated that when nobody's on the same team, and it's ultimately nobody's fault, everyone was just trying to do their job, but it was always at a detriment to the product. And so the product suffered, the fit suffered, the yield suffered. There was something was just not working because I didn't have a team. And so, but in making my own product, I really learned, or in having my own business, I really learned that I actually like to make stuff.
Yeah.
I was super uninterested in selling the stuff. I just it wasn't like, I kept wanting to like make more samples. I kept wanting to be in production. I kept wanting to order fabric. I was never really like, you know what I should do today? I should like reach out to some publicists. Like it just never was what I loved. And so, fast forward, 15 years being in this industry, you have to, it's a hard business. And I love this industry. Like, I love it. It's my third child, and maybe one day I'll have three children and it'll become my fourth child. But I love this industry so much, and I love making stuff, and I've found like where I belong in this industry.
Awesome.
And in this industry, I belong in making stuff, and I like to make that process easier for people, so that they can grow their brands and build their brands, which inherently grows ours, right? So the more good brands we partner with and have good relationships with, and they sell more and more and more, the better our brand is. And so we've kind of found our little niche along the way.
Yeah, that's so great. Now, have you noticed any major changes through COVID for your business?
Oh my God, of course.
Obvious question.
Like what hasn't changed?
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah, were
been
you
a minute.
like pivot quickly, or was it kind of a big hard struggle? I know some people were able to just pivot right away, but some people had a really hard time making that. It was a really hard pivot for a lot of people. So,
Yeah, COVID was crazy, and is crazy, as we continue to navigate it. So our COVID story, first few days of COVID were just devastating. So much of what was devastating about it was that I had this like sick feeling in my stomach, like I was gonna have to really let go of this awesome family we've built. We have a really strong team and a really wonderful group of people. And I was just devastated to even think about dismantling them, and, firing people and stuff like that. So
uh,
the first few days of COVID, we had pretty much every brand was canceling their order, or asking us to stop it, or asking us to take it from 1,000 units to 300 units, or, wanting to make this quick pivot. So our immediate business as we knew it, was just like
devastating.
devastated. But immediately, I would say by March 20th, I had an order for PPE. So I immediately was like, not going down.
Let's
I've got a great team. We're just going to transition what we're doing. And so we, were one of like the sooner LA manufacturing companies, to really pivot to PPE. We got a contract with Kaiser Permanente, so that allowed us to be an essential manufacturer.
great.
And immediately we just transitioned. Not to say that it has been an easy PPE, COVID ride, because we got kicked out of our building. We had to move like overnight. Like, I mean, there were so many, like it's only 7 months away, but it's almost like surreal to think about like what happened and the sleepless nights, and navigating it and making sure we were keeping safe while doing it. And it was such an experience. So yeah, so that was crazy, and it continues to be crazy. We actually, have an employee right now with COVID, and we shut down. Over the weekend. We normally do a Saturday shift. We shut down our Saturday shift, and we've been shut down, Monday and Tuesday. So, and we're having everybody get tested, and you have to prove your negative results before walking into the factory. So, we're navigating it daily. It's not at all over for us. And it affects timelines. It affects, but we don't have one client that's not our friend. That to us is like probably the number one thing that we do at Lefty, is we like are all about building friendships, and that's very important to us, because it's such an intimate process manufacturing. There's nothing worse than a rude client. Like, there's just nothing worse. So money just doesn't matter, and I just would never bring on a rude person. So we have a really, all our clients are so happy that we're still in business, that we're still able to make stuff from them. So there's a level of like understanding and really appreciating the fact that we're still rallying through this and coming to work every day. So yeah, so it's been a ride.
I'm excited to see where you take it because I know you're not going down without a fight, Marta. If
No, we are not going down without a fight. And we've at the beginning though, it was looking like we were going to, but it
it's
wasn't worth it.
it's been scary and hard for a lot of people. Um,
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you too. I wanted you to talk to people because you have a lot, like extensive knowledge on both ends of production. You've been a designer. You've run this company for so long. Can you like describe the importance? Because this is something that we noticed about Lefty production is that you're so customer oriented, and you can tell your heart is huge and you care, So we were really interested in finding out like if you could describe to people how important Lefty production is as a production facility, because like you said, most people don't give the little guy a run and most people don't value the customer like you guys do. So maybe just your overall outlook on how
You
different.
know, yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, my heart goes with the little guy, right? Because I was the little guy, and so I really understand like how hard it is to start a company in this space. Like it is a space that's kind of like available for big clients. I mean, right now brands are competing against the government as the government's bringing, these, 3-4 million, gowns to LA or whatever they need. Like now, you're trying to get something done, but you're competing against, one of our subcontractors is like offline because they just got a huge government order. So
Oh,
it's not that a factory, look, I can't speak for everybody. It's not like a factory, they're rude or they want to be rude. I think, now that I understand it a little bit more, I always think that it, there's two that tango, right? Like, a lot of people are like, whoa, you're so expensive. It's like, this is America.
well,
And it's expensive and we treat people properly, and that's different than importing a shirt for $1.50 overseas. It's different, and I'm not judging you for doing that, but you're not gonna get that in America. So it's also the customer. I think that there is there's fewer of us than there are customers. If you look at and I just find this stuff really interesting, but if you look at, the history of fashion in LA, you know, the 70s and 80s, there was a million cut and sew operations. There was, downtown New York, I mean, in Manhattan, I mean, and then, we started, you know, not people started going overseas and the industry kind of died, and now people are wanting to come back, but the industry hasn't caught up to it yet. So if you just look at a supply and demand thing, there's a lot more people wanting to sell bikinis on Instagram than there are people that can actually make them for them. So knowing that, how do you be a good partner for somebody to take you on? I think that is, a really big message here. So, my heart always goes out to the small guys. We have at Lefty a $5,000 entry order. People will, be offended by it, but I always tell people, like, you want me to have that, because if I take on every person that walks in our door and I am, like let's call me a garment slut, and I just take on every single project, I'm not going to give you good customer service. I'm just not. It's not available. So I try to, we try to kind of weed through and take on more serious projects, more for our customers' sake, because we only have so many sewers. And so, I think clients that really understand the way it works, and then we do so much via email these days. If you're upset about something, we ask you hop on a call, be a human about it, work it out properly. You get these clients that are like, they're things that half inch off spec and they can't even see straight, and they write this bully email. And, so it really is a situation where, most factories, they're not sitting by their phone waiting for your phone call. They're on the factory floor. We tell all of our clients, like, look, if you can't reach us, like, here's another phone number. Like, my employees aren't sitting by their computer waiting for an email. Like, they're like taking a fabric roll from one place to another. They're
Yeah.
cut. And so I think there's this understanding that a factory is just waiting for your phone call, and that's just not the case. They're on the factory floor. And so I think a lot of people get upset because they just don't have the proper information. So I know for us, and I know that there's so many other great factories besides Lefty, and I always want to support them. But I always look, if I want my interior designer to at 2 a.m. think about the way I want my kitchen booth, right? Like, and really like care about my project, and not just like see me, like, really like think about my project. There's like this symbiotic relationship. Then maybe I, want to make her a friend, right? Like, I want to make her feel invested in it. Maybe when I have an exciting news to share, I maybe like pull her involved in that conversation. Like, your factory wants to feel involved. They want to feel like what they're doing when something, that it's not just like that they're late, or that something's off spec, and they're just hearing from you at the times when you're disappointed, or, it has to really be that you're a part of the journey, and that there's this really hearty, healthy relationship, and that the client understands like that humans are sewing. We're not using a bunch of robots. Like, there's some human error involved. And when that all starts to happen, Lefty is not just the only great factory. There's other great factories, and I always try to encourage the smaller companies on how can they make, their factory work for them. And, we've had a lot of success by,
Being
really
humans.
being friends, like really being friends with our clients. I think that's a really important one that people just really forget. And, we're disconnecting even more so with COVID. It's now everybody talks on Zoom, or, we can't even see our clients for the most part. So there's even more of a level of disconnection, but there's, in my mind, more of a level to connect and to really be involved in all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, the human connection is so important. I feel
So important, and people forget it, and it's just
it's so simple, but it's so important. Yeah.
mm,
Now, what would you say are some of the most important skills you would need to like pursue a successful fashion design and production career? Like some of your skills that took you, if you hadn't had these skills, you might not have made it to this spot, you know?
so for being a brand, I would say the number one most important thing is marketing. I would say 100%. You know, that is all marketing. I would say, because that's, if you don't have your sales, and sales is so hard, nothing else falls into place, right? Like,
The sales, no business.
so yeah. So I would say the number one thing, do they need to like be a pattern maker? No. Do they need to be the best tech designer? No. Like, you can hire all of that, but you can't hire, like, sales is everything. So I would say sales.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Um, and I know you're all about the tech. So what do you do to kind of stay up to date on all of the fashion tech?
I love Rom.
I
He's
know.
like, I
Yeah.
love him. Um, Believe me, he'll tell me what I need to buy.
He keeps you updated.
Yeah, yeah, I just listen to him. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But one thing I love about Rom is he spends so much of his career in other countries
Yeah.
that are, you know, America is so far behind.
Yeah.
Like
Shocking.
we are not up to date on running a good factory. We're just not. I don't know where that disconnect happened. I was probably a baby, or a toddler or something, but somewhere along the line we lost our edge. And to this day I'm probably one of two or three like women run factory owners. It's just not a
Yeah.
women owned like business.
Yeah.
And it's kind of archaically ran. And a lot of times it's one family just sends it down to the next generation. And so that comes like not creative like ways of doing things a lot of times. Whereas like
Same old. Yeah.
for me, I have to do it creatively because I can't, technology is like my friend, like I can't, I bought the Tukatech laser cutter and I had spent the year prior, I had spent $100,000 on cutting samples
Wow.
with just people sitting there with scissors all day, just cutting one unit at a time. And, you know, in a year of buying the machine, and so so I didn't fire anybody. I was like, I'm not going to fire anybody. But then all of a sudden I had seven people, that weren't, they weren't cutting full time, but they were able to take all those hours and do other things for me, which has allowed us to grow more. So it's like, I think people get really sticker shocked at like, oh, to make this transition or bring this in, it's going to be 100,000 or it's, 150,000 to do this. But when you start to see how it's going to change your business, it's such a minimal, drop in the bucket. So, but there is a sticker shock component to it. But I think that as technology becomes available, like, it's smart to get it.
Yeah. I don't think people fully understand the entrepreneurial spirit and bravery it takes to like get through these times and decisions and things like that. So, how do you
Mhm.
kind of
I
maintain
just close my eyes.
close your eyes and fade away? Is that your stress coping mechanism
I,
or
you
else?
know, if you've I started my first business in 2007. Um, so, if you've owned your own business, so like I don't even know what is it, 13 years,
Yeah.
of owning my own business. So, I know not to look on my phone on the weekend. Like it's, like maybe I'm going to have a great email. Maybe I'm going to have an email like that's going to like take the little wind out of my sails. Like you
Don't
just learn how to, navigate, you know, like there's so many great days too, but like it's like anything else, like, there's no stability. There's no, it's your decision. It's your, ultimately like employees can come and go. Like it's ultimately on you, right? And so that's a hard thing. But I think you know, I think it's so great being an entrepreneur. I love being an entrepreneur. Like I adore it. I think it's awesome. There's the cost benefits have never like made sense for me to not do it. Like, but it's hard to not feel like you can mentally clock out all the time. So I think that you just have to do other things that get you in like the right headspace to run a company. And you might have to fight a little harder for those things, right? Like whether it's like, you know, a lot, like if we have an angry customer, like I immediately forward it on to my vice president, like,
Yeah.
because I just, for me, I don't want to, I can't let that person take the wind out of my sails. Like I have to stay strong. And so
So
what is that negative energy going to do for me? Like I want to know like what we could have done better, but I don't want any other knowledge of it. So eventually you kind of learn how to, keep your head high, and
just
stay focused and stuff, and stay in a growth, vibrate in a place that's going to keep you growing versus bringing you down. And so I think that that's just one thing I've learned just over the years of owning something.
yeah, for sure. What do you think is going to be coming? I know all of this is going to create a lot of change. I'm seeing so much right now. What do you think is going to be the future of production in the next, maybe, let's say 10 years? I know.
I have no idea. If I had a crystal ball, I would, you know, I can I'm not one to like look too far. Like I'm just like, let me look into 6 months.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's okay.
I biggest change I'm seeing that I think is going to become a consistent change is, I think no matter who our president is or what happens, no matter what, there is going to be a slow rebound to fixing how many people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. Like it's not like we're going to snap our fingers and unemployment numbers are going to disappear. With unemployment, what we've seen in the last few months, you know, has been this amazing new group of potential entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so as people start to like, maybe bang their head against the wall for 6 months and they're not getting another job and they're not, that's not working out for them, they're going to start to reflect inward and be like, well, maybe I should do something for myself. I've always had this idea of a handbag line, or I've always had this idea of a, whatever it is, a plus size swim line or whatever it is. They're going to start to focus inward, and their entrepreneurial spirits are going to start to roar.
Yeah.
We're America, and we
Resist.
have, that's what's going to happen. And so I think with that is going to become, and then also you have that element, and then you also have the element of, you know, people filing bankruptcy. So you have this element of, all of a sudden Neiman's, so all these other big brands that were taking up this space are disappearing on us. So with that, so now it's like you have this entrepreneurial spirit and you have
An
a
opening.
lot of opening as well. So I think this is going to lend for a lot more smaller brands shopping smaller, shopping more direct to consumer, which doesn't need a huge infrastructure in place, which is beautiful. And so I think that that is going to be the biggest thing that we see from COVID. And
Uh,
I think that, and who knows how long that lasts or anything, but I think that we're going to really see that we already see it a ton because, before people wanted a Saturday appointment or they wanted a 4 o'clock phone call or a 5 o'clock phone call when work was over. And now people are willing to talk at 11 a.m. because, they don't, they're trying to figure out their next moves. So, we're seeing it, and I think that's going to be a big move. And then hopefully, they're producing, stateside.
yeah. Okay. Um, I'm just trying to think of maybe something that um, maybe you could tell us that maybe people wouldn't know or that they'd be surprised to know about you?
Oh. Um, well, my first job is being a mom and being a wife. So I always like really um make sure everybody knows that about me that comes into my space, because it's pretty often that, especially now that, like, I was on a conference call and the principal called and I was trying to reach her about something, and like I just like hung up. Like I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but I just bye. So I think that's like an important thing that I really try to communicate with. But I think with that, every mompreneur I know out there, I think it makes us like so strong because we know how to balance a million things. We know how to do a million things. And I think it's a really good perspective. So that's like one thing I love to kind of share with people. And I don't think that everybody quite knows it.
That's great. If you were to have all of your contacts and all of your skills and all of your training go away, and you had to start over with nothing, what's the first? But you get all the knowledge that you have right now to stay with you. What was the first thing you would do?
Like, would I start a business, or like would I?
Like if you wanted to start your career, your same career over, but without, you didn't have the contacts or all of the stuff you built up, but you still get to keep your knowledge. What would you have done, to start right over again right now? What would be the first step you would make? Because now all the stuff that you would have done better before, kind of thing.
Well, I love this comment because it's always good to, like, I would do exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yes.
I'm not saying that like because I'm trying, like, I wholeheartedly wouldn't, like, I love Lefty and I love what it is now, and I don't, a lot of people are like, do you want to sign an NDA? Are you all gonna like steal our thing? I'm like, girl, I'm never like, I had to be a brand to know that I wanted this. Like, I would have never dreamed of this as a 6-year-old. Like, I would have never come up with this business model even a decade ago. Like, it's not it wasn't a dream of mine, but I actually like love it. And so I would do exactly what I'm doing right now versus like having this conversation and be like, oh, well, maybe I would go have another brand or something like that. I would literally just rebuild Lefty. And the way I would do it would be to hire the same exact people I have working for me.
So you'd start with hiring amazing people. That's what yeah, that's
I would just hire everybody back. Because and that was really like in COVID times, in the first, like, March. I remember those days really clearly because it was like, I think like March 13th, like school closed. There was all these changes, right? And we were like, I remember I was talking to one of my favorite clients, and she was like, I heard the rumor that like we're not going back to school the rest of the year. I'm like, bitch, you're crazy. There's no way. Like I just didn't know. I was like, there's no way. And then like the next day, my husband's like, school's closed. I'm like, what? Like, this is so crazy. So there was just such a shocking few days there. But I cried once, and the one time I cried was that I just was like, how are we gonna cover payroll for 6 months? Like, because I just couldn't. We've curated this little family, and I just could not deal with the idea of like firing people. Like, I just literally could not. I couldn't stomach it, and I just was like, I just was so upset about the idea of having to dismantle this like perfect curation of humans.
yeah.
Because I just was, because you can't really get that back easily, right? Like people are gonna, if you fire people, they're gonna go do something else. They're gonna move on. They're gonna start their lives, and you can't just pull that back in. And so that was when I was, we had $500,000 of business cancel within like a day.
God.
And so when I was at my weakest, I had to stop and think of like, what was the one thing I really like. I didn't care what our office building looked like. I didn't care about any of the fancy, but I just knew I just couldn't get rid of like family members essentially. And so yeah, so if everything got stripped away, but I still had those people and I knew who they were, I would just call them and bring them back.
That's great. Um, what what would you say to people that are just starting out and they just don't even know where to go or what to do when they're trying to develop a line? Would you suggest that they give you a call, or would you suggest that they do some research first, or do you want them to come to you with knowledge already, or do you got that ready?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like what they like wanted to make, like say they're like, I mean, if they like have no idea what they want and they just want to have a brand, like yeah, they need to do
Design.
some more work.
Yeah.
Like but if they're like, I want a plus size swim line and I want two one pieces and a bikini top and a bikini bottom, and I kind of am inspired by these photos off of Pinterest, then they can come to us,
Yeah.
or they can go to, then they can get started, right? Um, Makers Row, that place is, and like what you're doing, but, I'd be listening to, things like this. I would be, you know, really kind of connecting with all this information that's out there now that just wasn't out there a few years ago. Like a few years ago, you couldn't like listen to a factory owner on like, an interview. Like that just wasn't a thing. And so I would be doing a lot of that just to curate my team, right? Like ultimately, fashion's no different than any other company than running a restaurant or something, but it's all about the employees and the team that you curate behind you. And so that's what's going to make you successful. So I would just be really focused on like curating that team.
It's awesome. Yeah. How would you relate past and present fashion trends? And you've been doing this for a while. Do you find everything eventually kind of cycles back?
You know, it's as far as like trends, I'm not like that part of fashion. I really feel like I've lost my pulse on. I mean, as far as like big trends, like right now, like we're making a lot of hoodies and joggers, like because everyone's working from home.
Bro. Yeah.
Got some matching pajamas coming your way. You know, as far as like trends like that, tie dye is really like doing a ton of tie dye. Even 4 years ago, I think I had one thing at the dye house. Now I have like a ton of things. So, there are things that like cycle back. Like I remember, a few years ago, we were doing a lot of like rhinestone heat transfers. Now we don't do any of them. Like, so there's definitely things that like come back and forth and stuff like that. I personally like have kind of not lost my like passion for fashion, if you will, but I've really kind of grown a lot more interested in like sustainability of garments. You know, I'd way rather design for somebody like the hoodie that like they're gonna wear, like their customers are gonna like, they just need to feel like they have to buy one or two, like I'm way more interested in sustainability. And so like my, you know, ideas of fashion and, a tea-length dress versus short dress or whatever, like that's like not as interesting to me personally. So I feel as far as like fashion, I feel like sustainability will hopefully become more fashionable. and then like what that means to like people really buying what they really need. And like I'm all about, and I know for my own personal thing, like I love me some Golden Goose tennis shoes, you know, like those things are like almost $600 and I can only have a few, maybe one or two, but like I wear them every single day. Like I personally would way rather spend $1,000 a year on my favorite shoes and only buy one or two pairs of shoes a year. Like I just, so I personally have just transitioned a lot into that, and we're seeing that the brands that are kind of doing that too, their sales are doing great because I think a lot of people really want that transition.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it takes fast fashion, like
Yeah,
is fast fashion is like almost completely out of my head because it's just not what is sustainable in America.
yeah. What is maybe one thing that you would tell people to completely avoid doing in this industry?
Making a fast fashion, curating a fast fashion line, like, you know, people come to us with like 14 styles they want to develop. And I'm like,
No.
why? Why? Like that is just, it's over. It's completely over.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I started in this industry, you had to like, I started doing little girls clothes. And so when we would design, we would think about like, well, what's this skirt? Like, how's this sitting on a T-rack at like, you know, at Nordstrom, you know, and we would think like, oh, okay, we're doing a skirt and it works back with this t-shirt, and then the t-shirt works into like a hoodie, and then it also kind of goes into this cute bolero that matches with this dress, and they all sit on this pretty rack together. It's just no. How are you going to, you know, Instagram advertise that thing? And you could do a whole collection with two or three styles, like, and it could be amazing. And so I just always push people to not spend too much on their development, that then they don't have the money and funds for marketing and production.
Yeah, that's great. What is a question that you wish someone has asked you that really brings a greater awareness to your expertise and experience?
Um, you know, I don't know anything about marketing because I'm like really not interested in it, but I do watch some people do it right.
Yeah.
And so I always like, you know, it's crazy. Like now, like at the beginning, sometimes I don't even meet the customers at the beginning, but I always tell my team, like, make sure I get to talk to them. Because now I kind of, Lefty is, you know, essentially like every client gets an account manager, and that account manager. So we have 7 account managers, like really kind of building all of the brands that we're building. So you know, sometimes I get to know the brands, but sometimes like you know, I might not actually get to know them. So I always want the brands to like get to know me a little bit, because I like to talk to them about like what their concepts are in marketing, because I've seen so many people do it right, and then I've seen so many people kind of do it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that can make a big difference between whether your business
Mm,
is up or it just doesn't go at all. Yeah.
yeah, it's a huge thing. And so I always, you know, I think about everybody that's coming into our infrastructure as that's all of a sudden now my new business partner, right? Like that's our business partner. That's a marriage. That's a relationship. We have to nurture it. We have to be, you know, good to those people. And so I lead with that. And so we always want to know like what their marketing is, because I don't want to make 1,000 units for somebody that they can't sell. Like I would rather push them to make less. So we're really interested in like the sustainability of a client too, right? Like let's not spend a lot of money and burn through our first year, like, you know. And so we really want that transparency, like what's your budget, how can you do this? Like we don't want, like we really want there to be this relationship together, like what do you need from us, like, you know. And then that's when the magic starts to really happen.
A lot of honesty because you can help quite a lot that they don't understand.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
So I guess the last thing is I know you're big on tech and all of that, but And I did notice that you're doing the patterns, the digital patterns and stuff, which is amazing. We're going to
What
be
do you think of that?
so,
I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't.
so
That was my COVID gift to the community.
cute.
That was my I was like, okay, I felt very fortunate this year. We did survive this time, and the government came in and gave everybody the what was it, the PPP loan.
Yeah.
And so I essentially used some of the extra money I had from that, because I was like, you know what, I want to do something that's gonna just help people for 5-10 years down the road. And that is, I can't tell you, so many people it's already, we sold like 11 today. I mean,
Yeah.
it is allowing people to start with so much less than what they would normally need. And that to me is like the biggest gift I can give anybody. So we still have yet to even, make our investment back at all. But I know, and like, just in the amount of lives will change, like it'll totally pay off. Like, I just love that so many people can start a line now.
That's awesome. So what else is coming up for the future of Lefty production? Is there any?
We're gonna really kind of like focus and push this a little bit more. I want to like get some kids going. I want to get some other styles. I want to continue to build that. And the future of Lefty is, I essentially I've learned to really empower my team.
Mhm.
I would say that Lefty, more than ever, it feels like it's employee owned. It's not even, I really like, it is like at this point it is completely employee like operated. And so, you know, I think that that's when the real magic starts to happen, where my employees and my team knows that they have like all decision making power, and they really know, like, I ultimately like want like this really like good energy, good clients, like, you know, I want to care for people. I want this like Southern hospitality coming into manufacturing. And if I can just lead by that and then let them run with it, we're really seeing a lot of growth that way, because I can only manage so many clients, right? I'm one person. So, now we have about 7 account managers, and, so we're just going to keep building that.
Yeah, that's so.
Maybe ideally start doing it in other places across the country.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we're in Canada, and I know that you would take us on, and so other people in Canada can contact you and reach out.
Oh, Canada's our back door. We have so many clients in Canada. Yeah, totally.
Great. So I want to thank you so much again, Marta Miller of Lefty Productions, for joining us for this East Coast Fashion Summit from the West Coast. We really appreciate it, Marta, and I hope I'm so excited to see what you keep doing and how you keep.
Yeah. Well, we love new brands, and we love being a part of the journey and a part of the ride. And it just it I think that, you know my entire team really embodies that.
Yeah,
And so I think it's a really fun, it makes for a fun experience that doesn't have to be as intimidating.
exactly. And that's what we love about you. So thank you so much again,
Thank you so much for having me.
Marta. Have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Bye.